Can you see me now? Okay. Oh, my teeth are bothering me so much. Well, here I am. I saw the time was moving along, and I better get going on this next segment. Ready or not, right? Ready or not, here I come. So I was having a coffee here. It's 9:40 on my clock, and I said I'd start at 9:15, but time is hard. Time is hard for me. You know, one of the hardest parts of this game, I'll call it a game, at this point is knowing my friends from my enemies, you see? It's hard to know my friends from my enemies. So if you're my friend and I have attacked you, I do apologize. Look at that. See that bioweapon? This is a 3rd-degree chemical burn, but I think I touched some liquid from the front desk the other day that started this. This is starting to go down, but it could be contaminated medicines. See, the problem is I don't know. Now, this section is about living in a FEMA camp and the bioweapons. I'm pretty sure this is a FEMA camp, and I got this impression before. But when Donna came back with Sargeant on her name and a picture of her in a tutu, a pink tutu with her husband, well, I know she hates tutus. I know she hates Barbie. She told me how much she hates Barbie and how much she enjoys slaughtering animals, and that her feelings about Barbie are to cut it in pieces and plant it all over the yard. So finding out that she's the sergeant kind of was a confirmation of things I'd already thought. And as for Marcus Smith, well, I've seen him in an Army shirt, and I've seen him working with Donna. So maybe they're both involved in the FEMA camp. Whatever the case, they both are hostile towards me and Marcus's wife, Kedra, as well. Now, those are just the people that I know. I've also met people who I think might be on my side, on the other side. So there might be some double agents out here. It's hard to know. All I do know is that I'm not alone. If I were alone, I'd be dead. So if you are one of the guards protecting me, one of the angels protecting me, one of the psychics protecting me, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so how did I get, first let's talk about a FEMA camp. Now, as a targeted individual, since I left Massachusetts, when I left the University of Massachusetts, within a week, I was infected. Something hit me in the back of the thigh. I'm in the back of the calf of my leg. And what it did was it created a hole in my leg, an actual hole in my leg, but no blood. And around that hole was a hard rim, almost like a cartilage rim, a hard rim. I want to call it calcified, but I don't think that's the right word. It's another word. And later on, after I quit school, I wanted to have a good time. I started dating a local DJ and smoking weed. Started smoking weed again since college. I had not smoked marijuana since before I graduated from college, okay? The summer that I spent in San Francisco on that juvenile justice internship to get enough credits to graduate, 4 credits for the summer, and I had to live in San Francisco and Oakland and I had to teach an alternative high school, and my report ended up making the news without me because the people that stole the money from the government to run this fake school were put in prison for it. Only the black people, of course, right? Well, while I was there, I said, I'm not going to smoke marijuana anymore because I was about to graduate from college. No more play, okay? No more sleeping with people casually. No more marijuana. And I had tried cocaine in college, but I'm not the addictive personality type. And it just didn't do much for me. And whatever people got out of it, I already had. But when I dropped out of the University of Massachusetts, I tried cocaine again. And when I was on cocaine, I could see that through that hole, a being had traveled to my ankle. And if I were to tell you what it looked like, I have actually seen a picture that somebody drew. And I think they called it an archon. It was kind of a square thing with maybe a triangle hat. Not a human. But it was almost like an interdimensional view of the infection, of the living creature behind the infection, or the nanobot behind the infection. It didn't look like those spider things. It looked like a rectangle thing with a square on top and a triangle on top of that, and eyes. And of course, now this was on cocaine. And I was just doing cocaine for a hot minute before I said, this still doesn't really do anything for me. All it does is make you want to keep doing it till it's gone. All cocaine does for me is trigger an addiction reaction. There's no pleasure to it, no heightened, except for this heightened awareness, right? And this would have been years after the initial infection, because I didn't try cocaine until much later. And I left the University of Massachusetts in 2004. So I probably didn't try cocaine till 2006, something like that, okay? So a couple of years had gone by when I felt I could actually visualize the entity that entered my leg. Now, I dropped out of the University of Massachusetts, and within a week, a flock of pigeons landed on the roof. Now, pigeons don't go on the roof. And that night, there was noise in my attic. And when I talked to the landlord about it, she said maybe a cat got up there, that a cat had been in the attic before, right? The property manager. So I just boiled it down. Maybe they're right. Maybe it was just a cat. But it was a very strange noise. Okay. So after this insect bite, I try to go to the doctors because it's hurting me and it's scaring me. Well, the scar is gone. And when I go to the emergency rooms, they say I have scabies. One doctor didn't even come into the room because said, you've got scabies, they're contagious. But when I looked up all the symptoms and everything that I was having, I could see that I had a Morgellons infection. I could see that because I started researching it right away. And Morgellons was described as close to Lyme disease. So I immediately began a Lyme disease treatment protocol. I found a website for Dr. Hildegard Staninger, who had developed healing protocols for Army veterans and men serving in action that had been infected with Agent Orange. No, that's not any better. They were infected with Agent Orange. And I followed her protocol and Hulda Clark. So I did the Hulda Clark cleansings. I did the Staninger cleansing treatments, and I did treatment for Lyme disease through my ex-husband doctor. I would say, could you give me a script for this? Could you give me a script for that? And back then he could do it. Now he can't, but back then he could do it. Okay. Morgellons was described as creating fibers in people's bodies. And some people were sprouting insects. Now, I did not have any insects coming out of me, and I wasn't aware of any fibers coming out of me either. My symptoms were different. And I'll be honest, I can't remember my symptoms right now. Aside from the alarming wound, the wound was very alarming. And I think I noticed other extrusions, other things coming out of my skin. And hairs that would just grow really long. So once I got Morgellons, I started to learn about targeted individuals and what that meant and how it was being used, but not why. I didn't really know who the targets were. I thought that I had just become useless to society, right? That when I left the University of Massachusetts, that was my last chance to be useful to society. So the next step from there is bye-bye. That was all I thought. I had not associated it at that time with my status as an heir because I was for one, I thought my mother would never die because she's so healthy, right? For two, I'm not the kind of person that's going to act like a vulture waiting for somebody to die so I can live. It's not my style. And number three, I didn't know my mother was so rich. I knew my stepfather was so rich, but he was even younger than my mom and even healthier because he played tennis all the time. So he said he looked fit. He was jumping around on the sofa in 2016 when he called me before his wife shut off his phone because he had Alzheimer's, they said. And he called me. And he was jumping on the sofa, saying, my friends in Las Vegas said, and it was on FaceTime. And I was outside, so I couldn't really see. And I was saying, Ike, call me back. I can't talk now. And I hung up. And his white woman, wouldn't ever let him contact me again. And then he died. But he did call and say goodbye. And he was jumping on the sofa. So he was feeling pretty darn good and healthy and didn't have arthritis, right? No knee replacements on that guy. So I didn't expect Ike to die. They're in Bullhead City, Arizona, and McLaughlin, Nevada, where Yale professor Douglas Rogers is going to lead a group of Yalees to the Mojave Desert next month in March. I sure hope the Indians are ready for him and his little crew, because there's a lot of wealth where he's going to. And my stepfather owned a lot of it. And whenever I went to McLaughlin and Bullhead City, the city spies came out to keep an eye on me. They even talked to me once or twice. They definitely would stalk me when I came there because they wanted to know how much I knew about the inheritances. I visited the office that Isaac built there. It was empty, but almost everything was empty, as it is in most parts of Arizona and Nevada that I've been to. I've seen a lot of people occupying the space in a lot of ghost towns because they're trying to hold on to the land and mine and process the resources without being noticed. And that's pretty much the game that NATO EU has been up to here in America. So I was targeted before I was even born. because my mother was targeted. Ever since May D. Harrison Gaines filed a lawsuit in the United States of American courts against the oil companies that said, no, baby, you cannot separate the minerals from the topsoil. Don't be ridiculous. And got everybody paid. Ever since then, my family has been marked as enemies of the oil and gas industry run by Europeans, because each of us has shown a great deal of consciousness of our power as Americans and very little willingness to sell out. So after I'm useless, I'm thinking I'm useless to the University of Massachusetts, but what's really happening is they're setting up the next stage of my life, right? When suicide doesn't take me out and God sends me back, the game is back in play, right? Okay, what did Morgellons ultimately do, in my opinion, is going to be what I talk about. But before then, let me talk about targeted individuals, right? Now, once you start getting into targeted individual territory, you're with the conspiracy theorists. That's what they would call anybody who believed in Morgellons was a conspiracy theorist. The doctors who had all been forced into one lump by the medical school selection process, by the match that sets up your residency, and by the hospitals that are privately owned, and the black hospitals get closed. So more and more and more and more and more, the Europeans are controlling the entire medical complex. And the Europeans decided that Morgellons shall be treated like a mental illness. That you imagine you have parasites, and that imaginary thing makes you synthesize the symptoms. That's what they told everybody. Now, if you were a doctor and you went against that, you're finished. You're through. You might not even live. But you definitely aren't going to work, because all the jobs belong to the Europeans. All the jobs are given by the Europeans now, because they took the time from my husband. They took the 1980s to lock everybody into the HMO, saying doctors have been committing outrageous malpractice. The only way to stop them is to put them under government control. And then they started saying socialized medicine, everyone should get medicine, socialized medicine. And the HMOs were able to use blood libel to push themselves into power. And then the Jews moved in to take over the hospitals, like the Northwestern University Hospital, like Johns Hopkins Hospital. And they started executing their long-term plan, the plan that they've had ever since World War II, when they came here in a big mass with the Germans and the Jews came here together. Well, they were all Europeans, right? But they all came here together with World War II and began this system of centralization that would make sure that their ability to use bioweapons against the entire American public would not fail, because no one would believe the whistleblowers. No one would believe the Morgellons patients. And more importantly, no doctors would be engaged in the research for the cures, aside from the ones they own, who are developing the diseases. Okay, so what did Morgellons ultimately? Okay, so once you're in the conspiracy theory information flow, I heard about FEMA camps, and I never thought I would be involved in a FEMA camp, because it sounds so obvious when you're talking about it, doesn't it? It sounds like there'll be a bus coming up to your house, and there'll be a sign that says FEMA camp. And they started, whistleblowers started showing pictures of body bags being delivered to Walmart, and trains that look like the trains that took the Jews to the concentration camps, supposedly. Some people think they were all sent to Israel, and that's how Israel was occupied and became Israel instead of Arabia. Some people think that all those Jews that were supposedly murdered were simply moved. How else did they get all those people there? So conspiracy theorists started to say FEMA camps are coming. Our own military is going to put us in these FEMA camps, dissidents and things like that. Well, I didn't consider myself a dissident. I'm an American. But to the enemies of America, I'm an enemy. I'm a dissident. And if the enemies of America are actually controlling the government through private agencies like DARPA, NASA, CIA, FBI, and the states are reinforcing that control with police, licensing agencies, and the financial sector, the global financial sector, is making sure that dissidents never have enough money to get their story out. Well, they had all the bases covered except one. They were not able to control social media. You see, if I were here without YouTube, I would be subjected to all of this testing, and you wouldn't know. You wouldn't have any idea about the worms that will crawl into your ear or the liquids that will burn your face or the dentists that will plant hives in your teeth that slowly eat your teeth and occupy your gums. You wouldn't know, but I'm going to tell you. And you're going to know. Because social media never got under their control. Social media managed to stay somewhat global. Twitter was in the hand of the East Indians before Elon Musk and the other neo-Nazi NASA guys bumped them out. With what? Public opinion. Didn't they use the blood libel machine? You shouldn't have been able to buy Twitter. But you shouldn't be able to own a utility. And you can. But these are things that American people don't know. And when the conspiracy theorists talk about it, all the good, decent people who want to stay mainstream, who want to stay employed, well, they pretend like they just didn't even hear it. They pretend like you're the crazy ones. And by the time you're actually speaking, you are one of the crazy ones. You probably have been hospitalized, like I was so unjustly. They didn't offer me the clubhouses that the Europeans got. They didn't offer me the group therapy that the Europeans got. But when I got to the group therapy, it was as racist as anything else. Do you know they have clubhouses in California too? But these are for the Europeans. And I was telling you in the last segment, the suicide segment, about the Christmas that I spent in one of the clubhouses with the schizophrenics. And I was telling you about one of the girls who's had a sister named Bettina or something, who is in news reporting of some sort. And this person really was schizophrenic. She really is schizophrenic. I'm not, never was. She really is. And she was so mad I took her to the party. Because, Juan was busy. I was trying to spread the joy. She was going to be alone. I asked her, well, listen, I'm going to go to a party at one of the clubhouses. And she actually said, I can't believe you took me to a clubhouse with a bunch of schizophrenics. I didn't say, honey, you're a schizophrenic. I didn't say that. But she was actually really angry that I had, classified her as a schizophrenic. Me, on the other hand, I was just happy to be there, not home alone on Christmas. And I got lots of really neat presents. I got a mug. I got something else. And I got to see something that I'll never forget. I got to see the people from the corporations who wanted to put on their resumes that they had done this volunteer work and wanted to feel good and brag. And I saw them come and look down on all of us and not want to touch us or be too close to us. They just wanted to sort of deliver the food and serve the food from behind the table. And you could just see the fear and contempt. And I thought, wow, these are perfect European liberals as I have come to know them. They want to look like they're doing the right thing, but their heart's not in it. They're just doing it to get the credit on paper. I wasn't schizophrenic, but I was more accepting of everyone than the Europeans were. So that was just something really nice that Juan did for me. The next Christmas was 2012. And that Christmas, we went through the shift together. That Christmas, he stayed at my house. And he got violent after that. But yeah, he got violent whenever he had to leave, actually. So maybe it's a separation anxiety thing. I don't like thinking back on that. Because what was important was we went through the big shift, that 2012 shift. And I'm not sure if I got dropped into a new reality or not. But we definitely felt everything dissolve and reconstitute. Okay. So, back to the bioweapons. When they said the FEMA camps were going to take in Americans and murder Americans, I didn't see myself as a part of that group. And I saw myself as an heir with enough money to not be anywhere near where anybody could do that to me. I could be in another country if I wanted to. But I was definitely going to be an author. That was not going to be anything I was going to ever change. I just modified it to social media author. So, knowing that FEMA camps were theorized, once I started to get a taste of where I was and how I got here and the other resident people here, the other people around here, I started to think, oh my God, I think this is a FEMA camp. What is a FEMA camp? A FEMA camp is a concentration camp run by a private agency under the umbrella of the United States government. According to William Mount, almost every agency operating in America is a private agency using government money with no regulation, no oversight from the people who actually pay the bills. Because once the money goes to the IRS, a private foreign-owned corporation, some of it comes back to the United States government Office of General Accounting, is that what they call it? And from there, the private agencies are funded, but they are not responsible for fulfilling the will of the people, right? Which is how you get the FDA releasing poisons and dangerous foods instead of just having people go around to check local crops, which was how they started and how we expected them to stay. We didn't expect them to become poisoners, right? But isn't that with every organization? We thought that the SEC was actually going to protect American investors, and it doesn't. It protects the scam artists like Sam Bankman-Fried and Bernie Madoff and James Altucher. It respects the people that set up the innocent to lose their money in the stock market. Because the stock market is a fiction. It's not based on anything real. It's not based on production. It's based on rumors. And the Europeans that own the stock markets and the exchanges and the commodities, individuals own that. It's like owning a casino. Only it's legitimized by what popular culture thinks it is, not by what it is. So when they said FEMA camp, I was still naive. I was still a regular American. I didn't really see that as a part of me until I got here and I realized, wow, Honda took my car. Geico helped them. Why, if the news about those two companies got out, Warren Buffett would be really upset, wouldn't he? Right? And all the individual Honda dealers, because they made it clear to me, oh, we're not a part of Honda corporate, really. We're all individual franchises. So somewhere along the way, the big corporations released all of their operators to become franchisees, licensees. So the responsibility of the mother company becomes null. You're dealing with an individual business owner when you're dealing with a Honda dealer, right? And even when they try to do the right thing, like John Eagle Honda of Houston, John Eagle Honda tried to do the right thing. They tried so hard to do the right thing. But if those individuals did the right thing, they were terminated from their jobs. It happened. So they became fearful. They had to look like they're doing the right job. But what was even more amazing than that was how close the Honda dealership was to the railroad, and how closed off the highways were, and how deliberately made for enterprise business only the highways were, and how every time I drove there, I had my own little traffic jam of road warriors, of road enemies, of European drivers, Spanish American drivers. I'll call them Spanish American. I'll call them, the South American criminals, the Central American criminals. That's what I'll call them. The Central Americans and the South Americans are in with it too. So are the blacks, I learned once I moved, once I got closer in here, once I got stuck here and got to know people. So the whole city is involved with protecting NASA, Nazis, blood libelists, and every section of it is quadrant off. So the left hand never knows what the right hand is doing. Very, very dangerous city. Very, very dangerous and very, very militarized. So I'm here with no car. The IRS, a private agency, goes after my money source. So I'm living on 2/3 of the paltry amount I was living on before. So I can't afford to do better. I got evicted for complaining to the police to protect me in Phoenix. I got driven out of the low-income senior housing in San Diego by a racist who said he would get rid of me. And although Juan was very helpful, he did make my life there dangerous, in my opinion, in many ways. Not the least of which was the fact that I was really falling in love with him. And he was starting to promise, saying, let's buy a house. I'm going to buy a house. Do you like this house? Do you like that house? But I knew he was lying to me. I knew that he was going to move, but he was going to leave me. I knew this. I could just feel it. And indeed, he had already set up his next mark. So I had been on the run, is what I'm saying. I'd been driven out of everywhere, and the powers that be made sure that I wouldn't have enough money to live any place other than where I actually ended up living. It was affordable, and it was nice. It's nice. I think the rooms here are very nice here at the OYO rooms. I think the rooms are nice, and I think, if they just polish it up, it could be even better. But this used to be a Motel 6 for the oil and gas workers. So it was built to last. It wasn't like the newer hotels down the energy corridor till you get to Diamond International, Diamond Offshore. But an Anderson Cancer Center is right next door. But if I walk over there, where there's also a Morgan Stanley, where my mother probably still to this day might have a brokerage account, they'll send the guards out after me. So not only did I end up here, but all the environment, they built a fence across the street where I walk my dog, and the property manager across the street said, "You're a hot mess." Well, you're a hot mess. So she knew all about me. If I go down to Diamond Offshore, their guard comes out, actually hit my car, call the police to drive around. So they made it very clear to me that you're going to stay here. And then when I lost my car and they started attacking me in the street with energy weapons, directed energy weapons that can burn your flesh, well, then I started to keep myself in this cell. I kept myself in this cell. And Donna, Miss Donna at the front desk, would deliver my packages to me because I got a copywriting gig. Not really a job, but, I got an opportunity to review products. And I knew that Sunny Feely at Outer Drive East, her husband, had made a good living with that. So I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna get myself together and let me see what I can do around here. What can the International Ladies Chamber of Commerce do for the children here and the adults here? And even though by then I knew that there was a lot of sex trade of children here, I felt, well, they still need an education, right? They still need hope for a way out. That's really what I was thinking. But don't you see what a threat that would be to the pimps? The pimps don't want the children to see a way out. They don't want the children to imagine a better life, economic opportunities. And they don't want the hoes to do it either, the prostitutes. They don't want them to see a better way out. They don't want them getting off the mollies or whatever drugs they're taking. They need these people feeling that their only hope, their only place is in the sex trade. So that made me kind of an enemy. Then I wanted to continue to smoke marijuana. So I'm dealing with the local drug dealer. And he's giving me hemp. He's not giving me marijuana, right? He's selling me hemp. And he's selling it to me at a really exorbitant price. And when he left 1 year, he left around Christmas. He said he went to Phoenix, but I don't know where he went. And other people stepped in to take his place. And they told me, they said, Marcus told us, they call him Q on the street, told us to give you a higher price than everybody else. So I knew he was cheating me and for hemp. So there's not even the threat. See, you would pay more if you thought the dealer might go to jail for selling it to you. Not that I thought that, because I knew the police knew all the criminals here and what they do. But what are the police going to do? Stand up to the crime when the crime is the society? No, the police are going to be mad at you if you call them, because then they have to have their integrity on the line, and they know what they have to do. They know they have to sell themselves out because they can't arrest all these people. There's not a prison big enough for all the crime being conducted in the United States of America. There's not a prison big enough for these people. So I don't have a car, right? So I asked one of the local people to drive me to the grocery store in exchange for $40 a trip. Well, one day, Donna Jubert at the desk gives me 2 key cards. And I said, oh, I don't need 2 key cards. And that's when I still would go out of the room. And she said, oh, just keep them anyway. Well, it turns out that the guy that would drive me around stole one of those key cards. And I tell you, God looks out for me a lot. I don't get a free pass, but I do get a lot of intuitions. And my intuition told me, you change up the store. Go to a different store this time, because there was something too regular about the guy that was driving me meeting his friends, right? He would meet his friends when I was shopping. And once I saw 2 charges on my credit card for the same day when his friend was checking out with me. So I didn't know if they had one of those things that Juan showed me told me about, for manipulating, like one of the things that he used at Target when he was hacking into Target using my notebook computer. He was one of the hackers that did that big Target sting in 2013. And he used my computer. I think, was it November, October? So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, let me change up my store so that my friend here can't meet his friends coincidentally while I'm shopping. But he did. He met friends there. And they had to drive away and come back because they had to get that key card from him. And while I was out, they came into my room. They couldn't get all the luggage out fast enough, so they cut the strap on one of the last things I had from my mother, an overnighter bag. And they just cut the strap because I used the trick that I'd learned from the guy at the Motel 6 in Austin, Texas, who emptied and repacked my trunk and stole my birth certificates and Social Security card. And he taught me, oh, you know what? You can, if you put this like this and this like this, people can't just lift your stuff out. So I did what he said, braided all the things together, and they just cut it. Okay? And they came in here, and I don't know what all was missing. I try to forget that. But when I'm going through it, I have to think, wow, isn't that funny that Donna Joubert gave me 2 key cards, and Brandon actually stole one of them, and somebody broke into my room, right? So then you're getting a feeling for exactly what you're living with and what you're trapped in, right? But I'm still thinking, I'm going to get out of this, I'm going to get out of this. And I'm still trying to do the community some good because I'm wired that way. But I didn't know that the more I tried to do the community good, the more of a threat I became because it's a criminal community. So one day I'm telling Marcus, I'm saying, listen, Marcus, I know you're cheating me with the price. I know you're and I'm just asking you, could you please just sell me some real marijuana? So he came in the room with a little bag, a little suitcase bag, little cosmetic bag. And he took 6 or 7 bags of weed and he spread them all over my bed and spread them out. He did like this to spread them out. And he started crying. And I had my desk set up, because I was going to do business. I had my desk set up and I had a chair by my desk. And he sits in the chair and he's crying. And he's saying, Miss Silverrain, I'm just going through a lot of stuff. But, Miss Silverrain, I'm being honest with you. I'm selling you. He's just swearing up and down. And he's saying, I brought this so you can pick your own. Well, they all look the same. It's all hemp. It all looked like hemp. And it's all hemp. But he wasn't there to show me his hemp collection. And he was crying to distract me because they knew I was a do-gooder. And he said, I'm a black man. I'm a black man. I don't know exactly what that was supposed to mean, but I think it was supposed to mean, I'm weak. I'm stupid. I need your help. Pity me. Because he was doing a con on me, right? He's doing a con on me because he's trying to keep his bags on my bed long enough for the worm to crawl out. The worm that he had spread towards my pillow. Later, when I didn't end up in the hospital screaming and crying so they could kill me, Kedra came into my room as if she was going to be a client of the business coaching. And she dropped a second worm in here. And that was when I got to see the worm. That was when I got to see the worm. And I knew what it was. Because she left it on the ground. And she was looking for something when she was leaving. She was looking for something that she couldn't find. She was looking for that worm so she could plant it like her husband Marcus had done. So that it would crawl into my ear when I was sleeping. Maybe if you did not have a Morgellons biofilm that had been growing in your body since 2005, maybe the worm wouldn't bother you. But what happened to me was it released a whole symptom complex in me that let me know that there is a unified film inside my body. That when that Morgellons creature entered my body, it began to spin its web. The times when I had my right hand out but felt it was my left hand and I couldn't really sense my body properly. And then for a time, my whole left side went out and then my whole right side went out. And I don't mean I couldn't use it. I mean, I didn't have full awareness of it, right? After my near-death experience, I lost muscular control of my left thigh. My left calf. And I did not regain that control until I started using the intelligent cupping devices. Oh, I thought I had one right behind me. I must have moved it. Oh, I see my crystal ball is here. I know some of you Christians might be a little skirt of my crystal ball. But it's only glass. It's only a perfectly formed glass sphere. And it doesn't tell me nothing. But it is pretty to look at. And I just really like to have it right there. I got it from an Arab in a little shop in Las Vegas. And it came in an old red box. So I knew it had belonged to someone else before. And I blessed it and prayed over it to be sure no jinn occupy it. But I bought that from an Arab in Las Vegas at a little bottega. Well, it wasn't a bottega. It was an Arab store. Within a day of Marcus Q spreading those bags of hemp over my bed and crying like a little bitch to distract me, and he thought he gained my sympathy, but honey, when men cry, I'm disgusted because I hardly cry myself, and I really don't like to nurture weakness. And I don't respond to weakness in people. I figure if you're already broken, there's not much I can do. Because life is hard. You better be hard too. But he was just performing, and I had to give him a Kleenex. I said, you better wipe your eyes before you get back out with your boys. And he was like, oh, they don't matter, right? Because he had no manhood to protect because he was doing a psychopath gaslight on me. So that he could plant the bioweapon. And how do I know this? Why would a man come in here crying and showing me his hemp collection and spreading it out all over my bed? He never touched my bed before. I don't let motherfuckers touch my bed. I didn't even invite him on this side of the room. I had him over there in the lobby. Okay? But he walked over here. Well, within 24 hours, I'm feeling something in my ear. It feels like a spider is in my ear. So when I try to get it out, I find that just touching my ear hurts. It's as if my ear has been infiltrated with spikes. And I can hear it crackling as if an electronic transmission is taking place. So I put a magnet to my ear. And the creature responded with anger. It got furious, started to hurt me more. And I said, oh my God, it's intelligent. I tried one thing, it adapted. Calm down, it adapted. I tried another thing, it adapted. It adapted to every single remedy I could find. Nothing that would remove a real bug from my ear was working. Not hydrogen peroxide. When I called Donna at the desk, Sergeant Donna Marie Jubert, When I called Jubert, she kind of was amused, and she said, "No, I don't know anything you can use. Try hydrogen peroxide. If anything bubbles up, then that's it." I said, "Oh." Nothing bubbled up. And whatever it was, didn't care if I put hydrogen peroxide in my ear or not. And there were things it didn't like. And when it didn't like something, it burnt my flesh. Okay? And I believe it used electric charges to sear my flesh. Because just think about the things that you would use to corrode an electrical system that you have in your household. So when I put the magnitude, so I said, well, I'll be damned. This is an electromagnetic nanobot. So I looked up nanobots, and I found Dr. Virtual 7. And I saw the picture that he had of a nanobot with a red head and spider legs made out of metal. And I said, yeah, it feels about like that. Now, it's a multi-element structure, but one of the structures does look like twisted fiber spider. It's got long flagella, and I imagine that was what was causing the itching. Well, my ear got swollen with the creature. In the curve of my ear, I'm not sure, maybe if I call up an ear picture. I can actually tell you the name of the structures. We'll look at this one here. Oh, this is a very good picture. Okay. Okay. On the on the anti-helix, there was a metal. No, yeah. On the anti-helix, there was a metal structure, a little metal nodule. Up above it on the anti-helix, because my anti-helix is sort of has two parts. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, on the concha, the concha was swollen with a metal nodule in it. The anti-helix had a bigger organism in it. Out of the concha, coming around the helical crux, there was a segmented worm type thing that actually entered my flesh right behind it. Okay? So let me come back to my live stream. I hope I was able to explain that well enough, okay? So the anti-helix actually had a big fat organism in it. The little thing, the crux thing under it, had a metal dot. Well, using some tweezers, I was able to pull all these little hairs that had been established around my ear that were actually preventing me from touching my ear. They were giving a pain reaction, right? If I pulled it, it hurt me twice as hard. It didn't get hurt, I guess, but I did get hurt. So I was able to eliminate its most external defensive system. And when I went to touch that, I felt it was metal. It was not soft organic. It was something made out of metal. So it took me a few times to build up my pain endurance until I could really crush it. And I crushed it so big that it could no longer travel. It could no longer travel out and up around to get into my head. It couldn't go. And when I did that and I successfully blocked it, something right behind it reared back and stabbed me in the ear. It was the worst attack that I'd ever felt, and the most deliberate. And it was a retaliation for me permanently damaging the organism. I permanently damaged it, and it had a human reaction. And that's when I said, "Oh my God, this is a robot being operated by a human being, and this human being must have a biological map of my body." Right? But I'm still in the state of not believing. I'm still in the state of, nah, can't be that, right? But it still has not quite ended. And it might be starting up all over again. I'm not sure. But that was mid-October. That was done to me right after I announced that I was going to leave Twitter. So once again, I'm becoming useless after being the most prolific tweeter, totally ignored, shadow banned, most prolific tweeter. And I say, oh, wow, well, a Nazi, Werner von Braun, owns it now. I guess I'm out of here. I'm not going to make Werner von Braun rich. I'm not going to make the Nazis rich. If the Europeans are going to own Twitter and turn it into private property like they do every place else illegally, I'm not going to help them. I'm not going to create any real estate for them to steal. And within a week, I was infected. Just like the Morgellons in the first place. Within a week after me being useless to Europeans, I get pushed out into the medical experimentation plantation. Right? Or whatever you want to call it. Closer to my end. Still useful, but closer to my end. So I don't know exactly why Marcus deployed this weapon, but I've seen him wear a U.S. Army shirt, and I've seen him working with Donna together. And the day I saw them working together, I guess I had a lot of packages that day, and they were bringing them in together. And I just went, boing, and I was like, I'm in a FEMA camp. It hit me again. They are the military guards. They act like they don't know each other because, there's still a chance you could run, right? You wouldn't get very far, especially in Houston. But if you recognize you're in an enemy camp on your own country, you could still run. So they're going to pretend like they're separate entities, And at that point, I didn't know if Donna Marie was a cop. I thought she was a cop. Because when I asked her, are you a cop? She had some kind of badge. She said, no, I'm a bounty hunter. And she loved lots of weapons. I'd get her stuff, like holsters and sighting things she could use to kill me. Because, it was among things I was being offered. And I was still thinking that we were all normal people, somewhat, and Americans united in a cause. She told me her whole family was military and that her children had no ambition other than to become Army. Her 16-year-old twins just wanted to be in the Army. And she said her daughter's in the Army. But she didn't say she was in the Army. But then she goes on a second training to Las Vegas and comes back sergeant. And then I said, oh my God, I am in a FEMA camp. So that's conspiracy theories, FEMA camps, concentration camps, and let me continue with bioweapons. Now we're just clearing bioweapons. Okay, so I'm able to stop the dancing in my head. I'm able to control the pain of it by disabling elements of this weapon. It has flagella on the outside so that if you try to enter its terrain, it will sting you. It will hurt you. So I just removed all the little hairs it had growing out of my ear. I just removed them. Then I can get inside more. Well, once I get inside my ear, I find I don't have an eardrum anymore. You see, I used to have an eardrum that if I put a Q-tip in my ear, it wouldn't go that far before it hit an eardrum. My ex-husband, when he was learning medicine, he'd be looking in my ear with his little, they call it an oscilloscope. What do they call that ear thing? Well, he's looking in my ear. I had an eardrum. He said, you have the cleanest ears I've ever seen. Is that an eardrum? Now, no eardrum. Now, from here to here, there's a tunnel. So if I upset this one over here, it can run over to this side. You think I'm lying, don't you? but it goes in. Okay, so on that outer curve of my ear, as this creature begins to grow, I'm fighting it, but it's still growing and developing, and it's still adapting to my attacks. So now it's trying to migrate. It's trying to migrate to the tunnel that the Morgellons infrastructure already laid out inside of me. Okay? Just like you have a circulatory system, the Morgellons created a circulatory system. When they shot me with this the day that I went out, they activated an alternative circulatory system that if I go outside, either the lights or the air, I'm not sure which, will cause a whole vein system to stick out all around here, around this wound. And I noticed that when the Morgellons was first introduced into my system. I noticed that if I got cut, I wouldn't bleed in places. Maybe a clear fluid would come out, but no blood. And I thought, wow, that's really weird. I didn't know you quit bleeding when you get older. I bleed now because the biofilm has been so weakened. And the first step to weaken it started before the actual worm attack with the intelligent cupping devices that were actually removing the diseases from beyond my body. And I could feel it pulling these diseases out of me. And I got, the way that the police had crippled me was improved, you see? Because when I was in that second jail in the stainless steel cell, they may have induced other growth processes within me that made everything else easy, that made me cripple. So by the time Marcus deployed the nanobot, I already knew about extra-dimensional diseases in my body. I already knew a little about the biofilm, but not as much as I know now. Now, I'm probably using the word biofilm incorrectly because I don't know the word for it, and maybe there isn't a word for it yet, but imagine that this is your body, and right inside your body, there's another body. But that body is in your body and beyond your body, like a glove and a balloon at the same time. Like you're in a lining. You're the hand in the glove, and the disease is the glove, and it's even attached to a body. Because there were times when I would have the creatures in my ear on the run, and something would come from somewhere else with an attack, almost as if they called in the generals, or called in the infantry. But the fact that it's metal makes it very hard. It's actually hanging out around here right now, because at some point I drove it out of my ears, and behind my ears got swollen. Now, if you went to the doctor, they'd say you have swollen lymph nodes, and maybe you might get an antibiotic or something. But the creatures would still be living there, and they would not be lymph nodes. They would be creatures. So I drove the creatures to the backs of my ears. They're still there, but they venture out. They're weakened, but they still exist. The normal reaction to finding a bug in your ear is not to blame your drug dealer, right? But to go to the hospital. You'd think, oh my God, something crawled into my ear. But I'm not going to the hospital because I know too much about that. I was abused in so many hospitals in Arizona, I was turned away for treatment. They probably knew that the Morgellons had been activated and didn't want to be responsible for doing any diagnostic tests. Because it's a closed society. Don't think for a minute that the enemies of America don't have a very excellent communication system. You can't get anything done without an excellent communication system, as you can well see from watching this yourself. If you can't get the word out, you may as well not be there, frankly. So they have a communication system. Everybody knows me. So I wasn't going to go to the hospital because I already knew what they'd say. They'd say what they tell everybody, especially in Houston. You got cancer. But don't worry. We have 1,000,001 treatment centers with innovative treatments. We're the cancer center of America. And then they would kill me, like they did my mother. After telling her she had diabetes, and then telling her she had a pancreatic cancer, when what she really had was a bioweapon. I felt it with my own hands. It was like this lump in my belly, only bigger. Like I told you before, it was years ago when I first felt the heartbeat at my solar plexus. And I thought it had gone away. And my stomach was going back to getting flat, but somehow it's been reactivated. Somehow it's been reactivated. I can feel it right now. It has its own heartbeat. And when they infected me in my lip, and then I survived, but then they reinfected me twice now, that days I went outside, you could actually see it bumping in my neck. The day that I did the video and was talking to South Africa, and I had the scarf around my neck, I had the scarf around my neck with medicine in it to kill that thing, because it lives right here. That's it right there. You see? So, in addition to living inside a glove, inside my body is something with a heartbeat, an intelligence system. It likes food, it likes air, and it can communicate with other beings. When I put the magnet on my ear, it burnt my flesh. And I had to deactivate more of it before I could put the magnet on my ear. And through time, I don't know, I did other treatments. And through time, I was able to deactivate that whole communication system, I think. Although, when some people come near me, I can feel that they have a device, because as I told you during my outside videos, I could feel it, and then I'd look around and I'd see somebody. And it wasn't spidey sense. Well, it was in a way, right? Because it's a spider thing. But it would just be tickling in the back of my ear. And the reason it's tickling in the back of my ear and not completely debilitating me is because I've beaten it back so far. But I have not been able to kill it, because it's not made of flesh and blood, and it's not human, and it's not even just in the third dimension. It's a lot more powerful than me. So the normal person would have gone to the hospital, and the hospital would have done a misdiagnosis, and the normal person would be dead. And then once dead, the entire body becomes food for the organisms, right? Your entire body, because I'm sure that the undertakers, who are all licensed, all hand chosen, I'm sure they know all about this. I'm sure they know quite a bit about this. I mean, you've heard of bodies moving after they're dead. It could very well be the organisms. And the organisms might have a timeline. It could be that the reason that they're not as active in me is because they were supposed to be free by now. You see, because it could be that we've just been sold out to an insectoid race as a cocoon for their larval stage, for their larva stage, before they become mature adults. This is something to consider because of the symptom complex. Because that would be one way to make money. And we know that the Germans and the Jews, through NASA and all of the private agencies associated with the aerospace industry that we have funded, we know that they have been in contact with people and species from other planets for quite some time without telling us. They've been using us as commodities for those cultures. So once I didn't become debilitated by the earworm, Kedra came by to try the earworm again, but she messed up. and dropped the earworm. Now, one more thing about Kedra. Kedra was working for the United States Post Office. In Phoenix, Arizona, I uncovered crime where the United States Post Office agents were complicit with fraud, international global fraud. And, you know, when all my packages would come in bashed up, and my technology would come in my technology would come in touched. Somebody touched my computers or phones. Then I started to think, well, I wonder if the post office isn't involved in this. And if you are running out of a hotel, there are a lot of things you can do with identity theft. And if you're able to get into the post office database, you're able to find out a lot of information about who is deceased and no longer, accepting products at their address. And you could actually buy things using someone else's identity. So there are all kinds of ways that a crime ring can use a United States Post Office person. But I think she had gotten laid off because she had a heart attack or something. And that was really funny because I'm just a little bit psychic. And around the time that she became disabled, somebody was doing psychic attacks on me. And I was reversing them. And she and Marcus ended up hurt. The only other time that happened was with Performance International, Michael Silver and Bill Walsh, who were with GoDaddy, and they were stealing my data, my websites. They were inserting advertising between my intellectual property and making sure I couldn't get Cloudflare to tell me about traffic to my website. And they were running all these Performance Unlimited or Performance International, something. They had some kind of an agency where they would tour Phoenix and look for everybody who was looking to be an entrepreneur. And then they would recommend products like GoDaddy, like Fiverr. And then you would get in with these companies, and Fiverr would pack your data with so much traffic. I mean, you buy a 10 kilobyte image from Fiverr, and you got 10, 15 megs coming back. And then you upload that, and then that spreads, right? And they were doing a big business with that. But they were also stealing my GoDaddy and sabotaging my business so that I couldn't make any money on my book. Because Kindle also had a scam going with the girl who was recommending Kindle. I forget her name, but she would have like an advertisement about Castle. She used to talk about fairy tales, and she was doing self-help books, and she was a Jew. And she's close to Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson, another Jew who was running for president. And they had something going with Kindle. They made it so hard for me to upload my Kindle book. And then it was immediately sabotaged on the market, immediately sabotaged. I had to ultimately take it out of print just to save it and save me from knowing what they were doing. But I think you can still get it from foreign vendors who stole the imprint. But it wouldn't be the right edition. Only the 5th edition. The 5th edition is the last edition. And they would change the editions, and they would make the uploading impossible. I had the worst time doing that. But when I did my book for Patrick Burmaster of poetry, it went just like that. It went normal because they weren't interfering. They weren't trying to censor me. They weren't trying to frustrate me. They weren't trying to block me from telling the story of how the Ivy League stole intellectual property and blacklisted me. And now here I am in a FEMA camp being the subject of biological weaponry. So after Kedra Smith, if that's her real name, after Kedra Smith, her attempt to reinfect me, because they figured maybe it just didn't take, right? Maybe it just didn't take because I wasn't even really showing that I was reacting. I was mostly keeping it to myself, except for starting to really wear head wraps, because I got the feeling that the fibers in my wigs were being sucked in and used as material, because they need raw material, like the metals in the air. That's how they were able to create the metal structure that's been indestructible. You see? But that just means it's just laying dormant and waiting to reappear. It's not dead yet, because I can feel it. And I can feel it in the interior moving. And there's nothing I can do about it. I can feel its heart beating in my solar plexus. And there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, I punched it out, and it released some seed-like things that to me look like headless ticks. But that was just once. I haven't seen any headless ticks come out of me since. And I'm not going to punch myself in the stomach every day, because it's not going to kill it. You see, it's shrunk, but it's not dead. And it has been there for a long time. And it started growing with Morgellons. So I see myself and the other targeted individuals, especially those who were infected with the Morgellons, as the beta test for what they're going to deploy to the public. If you saw the Florida aliens and the Travis Scott show right here in Houston was the Travis Scott, then you get a feeling for how frequencies can affect people. If you look at the IBM Watson YouTube about a IBM Watson party, you can learn about how they use scent sprayers, musical sounds out of hidden speakers to control people's behavior. So I've already told you that they were mapping out my neurological system to the point where I couldn't tell my right hand from my left, but not in real life. It was almost as if a dream was simultaneously happening. So I know that they had invaded my consciousness. As I defeat levels of the bioweapon, I was able to feel tingling and stimulation through my crown chakra. And that was when I knew that they also have the chakra system involved. That your biology, beyond what you've ever been taught, has been used by very sophisticated bioweapons, some of which are being controlled by human beings with nothing more than a joystick and a computer screen. Okay? How did the bioweapon get from my bed into my ear? Somebody guided it there. E-games, e-sports, Austin Goodry, e-sports. So here I am in the FEMA camp, trapped, right? So Kedra tries dropping a second worm. I capture it. I've thrown it away. I'm sorry, I threw it away. I just didn't want to hear in case it reactivated. And I didn't take any pictures because all my pictures are stolen. And I can't upload important pictures. And all my pictures are padded with the data they get from the traffic. So I don't even use the camera anymore. So when they saw that the worm didn't send me out of here screaming, running to the doctor, that's when Marcus used my complaining about the marijuana, which is hemp. And I complain every time. I'm like, hey, don't you have any real marijuana? Blah, 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 blah. And on this day, he gave me a packet that actually had California on it. And he said that they went to California and got some real weed, but it was hemp inside the bag. It was hemp. So when I said, this is just hemp, he said, okay, I got something for you. And he was kind of malicious, and he brought me a little twisted bag. And he said, try this. And I didn't open the door for him because he had stolen some things from me. And when he was here, he would always answer the telephone twice. So I knew he was taking pictures of things in here. But I didn't know that he was using handoff and other iPhone things to transfer data to my telephone as well. So when he was in here, he'd be doing a lot of skeevy stuff, right? Looking all innocent. So I wouldn't open the door. I just opened the chain, and he handed me a little bag. Well, I want to smoke it right away and see, was this really weed, right? I know it's not, because it looks like all the other shit. But I'm hopeful. Well, it wasn't even 5 minutes before my hand starts stinging and my mouth starts stinging. And I go, I wash my hands, I wash my hands, I wash my hands. But now my flesh starts melting. I had a picture, but I might have deleted it. But you can actually see my flesh melting. This is a 3rd-degree chemical burn. And it happened, and I reacted to it right away. It would have kept burning me. And it hurt so much because it was burning me. But I was able to put it in stasis. And ultimately, I was able to stop it from progressing until recently. Because I'm captive here. That liquid that was on the ground on top of my drinks that was brought up from the front desk, that liquid. Since I touched that liquid, this started reacting again. This started happening, started traveling down here. And this side started activating all over again, right? So as long as I'm here, reinfection, they can infect me until I'm dead. And along the way, they can learn what will people do to try to save themselves. And let's create a way they can't get around it. Let's take everything Silver Rain does to defeat these bioweapons and make sure that she can't, that the next guy can't. So this is the beta test. So the next thing that they used on me burned my flesh. And I really wanted to go to the doctor, but I knew that the doctors would treat me with disdain, and I knew that the doctors are in on it. So they're not going to fix it, right? And then they'll find the tumor here, which is not a tumor. It's an entity, a living entity with a separate heartbeat, a separate circulatory system, a separate dietary system. Why do you think people make poop when they don't even eat? Something is making poop. If I don't eat, I'll still poop. Every day I'll still poop. Even if I don't eat. So it has nothing to do with intake. It has to do with what the organisms are doing. And maybe that's how they hatch their young. Who knows? I'm not saying I know. I'm just telling you what's happening and the best I can do in making sense of it. And I'm telling you that the United States Army is actually attacking American citizens with these bioweapons. And it's starting here in the FEMA camps. Am I done? No. Let me summarize. The worms that get into your ear that are also capable of communicating and are electromagnetic, that are attached from your ear. They can travel to your brain. They can travel down your neck. They can travel to your solar plexus, and they can even give you a heart attack. I felt the heart palpitations more than once. And it reminded me of when I was in Arizona and a team of young ATV people, probably military training, used a defibrillator machine to try to give me a heart attack. But I studied with yogis. I've studied yogis. I've studied with yogis. Not physically, but I've studied with yogis. I read their books. I do their practices. So they haven't been able to take me out with the heart attack. But they've tried. So you can be defibrillated, and they have mobile defibrillators. So you could be riding in your car and a truck comes up beside you and you have a heart attack because that truck incinerated you. I've been projectile weapons, electromagnetic, dentistry. Dr. Edmund Eves of Penyan, I went to him while I was in Penyan. I thought he would do a wonderful job. He put me in Invisalign braces that cracked all my teeth at the baseline. That made it real wonderful for this disease that's in my teeth and gums. Whatever's in my teeth and gums has eaten the dentin out of my teeth. if I attack it, it'll actually contract. When I break its supply system, my teeth will actually contract. If they put clam DNA, mollusk DNA, I'm almost sure is a part of this weapon because it's able to contract and expand. This tooth that got infected with the ear, it'll expand and contract. I removed so many organisms from my gums just so I can eat. But they always come back because they have metal components. They are superior to humanity. I can't beat them by myself. Now, I also, got some antibiotics, but you're supposed to take 2 weeks of antibiotics, and I couldn't get 2 weeks of it. I mean, I couldn't get 14 days of it. I could only get two weeks of it. And if you don't take an antibiotic for the prescribed time, the creature can develop protections against it, ways to defeat your antibiotics. So the doctor I was working with refused to prescribe the full course of medicine, only prescribed the 2 weeks. And it could be that he is controlled by his hospital system to the point where he's not allowed to prescribe freely. That could very well be the point. But it could also be just an attempt to kill me, because the person has tried to kill me before. Anyway, projectile weapons. They used my jewelry to aim it at me. And you can tell that's not a regular wound, even though it has done some bleeding. But it's right in the middle of a venal system. And I don't know if this venal system, it must have been here before, but it wasn't activated. See? Now, you can't see the veins right now, but I bet if I go outside and they shoot me with something, you'll see these veins sticking up again. Because this organism is a body. It's not a bug in your ear. It's the communication system for the organism and the way that the organism talks with the other organisms in other human beings. So why? Let's talk about why. Well, I can only look at what I know, right? Germans and Jews came to America together. They said they were enemies, but we all see that they're enemies of America. So they are united in their hatred of Americans and their desire to take over America and all of our lands. Now, I know from YouTube lessons, so I could be wrong, but what I've heard is that Jews believe that they're going to have 10,000 slaves. I have heard, I don't know if it's right or wrong, that Jews do not believe in an afterlife. They believe this is it, which means that they believe that they're going to have those 10,000 slaves here and now. Well, how are they going to get it? Are you going to be a slave? No, you're not. Yes, you are. You are going to be a slave because this creature has the power of mind control. Okay? Now, I'm going to say that the intelligent cupping device withdrew some of its connections to its higher self and gave me more power over this environment. And with that power, I was able to discern me from it. Because also the meditation, also blessings from archangels and angels that I've been given. Also the fact that God sent me here for a purpose and promised me it wouldn't be stupid. It would be meaningful. So when I'm going after this thing, there'd be times when I'm going straight for it and I lose track of my hand and end up poking myself way on the other side because I'm not controlling my hand anymore. I'm thinking I'm doing something, but something else is controlling my hand and my sense of where my body is. And that's when I knew, oh, wow, this is mind control. And that's when I had the memory of not knowing which hand was which and of actually in a dream state sort of testing the hands. Because these computer systems that are mapping our entire neurological system are also communicating with it. They're communicating with us. They can communicate with us through the computer. I mean, I've got a hacker out there that's got complete control of my Bluetooth. If they don't like the music I'm playing, they turn my Bluetooth off. And they'll turn it off again and again and again and again and again. Because I don't have control of the whole computer. I don't. And did they teach us computer science in school? Do you know what half the stuff on your Apple phone does? Do you know what half the stuff on your Google phone, on your Android phone does? No, you don't. And if you've got children and you've given your children technological devices, you can bet that that technological device has gone through your entire network. So a lot of people said, well, when they activate G5, that's going to be a problem. So maybe this nanobot wouldn't have worked without G5. That's possible. I know I am more comfortable when I turn my computer off. And when I unplug everything all together, I feel better than ever, because that night of the blackout, they did something to my electrical so that when I, turn one light on, another light comes on too. So maybe they can even come in through your electrical and reprogram your computer now, or install spyware, or turn it into a bot. In terms of the biological weapons, my advice is to raid the Harvard databases. Charles Lieber created the COVID. Charles Lieber was a full-time professor at Harvard in nanobiochemistry, which is exactly what you'd need to know to create the creature in my ear, and the creature in my gut, and the creature that has occupied my space. You'd need to know nanobiotechnology. And he also had a full-time job at Wuhan University. And he was picked up. They picked him up in 2020 after they succeeded in killing a lot of people. And you know how they killed him? I'm going to tell you how they killed him. They turned their bones to mush. People virtually melted to death. They turned to goo. I'm not positive about it, but I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure they turned him to goo. So you've got a situation where someone is creating a weapon that takes over your brain, but also creates infrastructure in your body, a body inside and outside of your body. And it's extra dimensional, and it's made of metal and organic stuff. It regenerates rapidly. And it's very hard to beat when you don't know, and you're just attacking an arm or a leg and not really stabbing it in the heart and killing it. I think that's everything. I think I got all of it.